Alrighty, so let's get into it. So yeah, the Arizona Cardinals are an interesting team next year. You look at what they did some nice things in the draft. Darius Robinson, Marvin Harrison. You talk about day one winners there. As Arizona Cardinals kind of fit that narrative of day one winners, so to speak. But yeah, Marvin Harrison, Darius Robinson. I think those are two picks to really kind of anchor the draft. The question I have is, Marvin Harrison's going to make an impact for the Arizona Cardinals, but my question is, how much of an impact does he make next year? Is it like, does he really dominate next year do him and Kyler Murray just light it up with that connection and that just like propels them to get a couple more wins? I think with Marvin Harrison, it's really a tough question. Obviously, time will tell. Obviously, it has to unfold next year, but I think if you're saying like, I guess the main question I have is how many does that give having Marvin Harrison, does that buy them at least one or two extra wins? Because you think about how many close games there are each season in the NFL. So having a guy like Marvin Harrison, the impact he's going to make, does that win them one of those one or two extra close games? Does that make them go from maybe a 5-win team to a 6 or 7-win team? So I think that's what's going to be really interesting about the Arizona Cardinals. And then Darius Robinson, how much does that help the Arizona defense? How much does that help their pass rush? It's a team that's really needed help defensively. It's a defense. I mean, it's kind of a defense that's just a lot of no names. Zaven Collins is underperformed, former first-round pick. Budda Baker's been pretty good. They got Sean Murphy Bunting from Tennessee. From Tennessee, he had some nice seasons with the Buccaneers. Kaiser White at linebacker. Bleal Nichols at nose tackle. He wasn't really very good for the Raiders, but yeah, I think with Arizona, it's just a roster really lacking some talent. You do got Paris Johnson at right tackle. Trey McBride was a tight end they drafted a year ago. So yeah, the question is, how much of an impact do Marvin Harrison and Darius Robinson have? Does Michael Wilson continue to get better? Michael Wilson, receiver out of Stanford that I liked, many people liked, that they drafted it. They took in the 2023 draft. And then does Kyler Murray have a better season? Got Desmond Ridder too. They did draft Trey Benson. So yeah, Arizona, there's some pieces there. Certainly were one of the winners of the first round. So yeah, that's the main question. Is this a better football team? Is Kyler Murray a better, I guess that's kind of just the main question with the Arizona Cardinals. Is this just a better football team next year? Because there's definitely, if you talk about we have evidence. Marvin Harrison, Darius Robinson, hope that Kyler Murray has a better season. So a good draft, hoping Kyler Murray plays better. Pieces on defense in the secondary: Murphy Bunting, Budda Baker. Budda Baker, at least you can say emphatically he is a good football player. Michael Wilson's still young, so with young pieces, hoping guys get better. I think that's the question with the Arizona Cardinals. Is this a better football team next year? So look at the San Francisco 49ers. So yeah, drafted Ricky Pearsall. So yeah, if Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel are not traded, they drafted Jacob Cowing too, Ronnie Bell. So look at this is if this wide receiver core stays in place, this will be a strong unit once again. So, and then still have Trent Williams, strong offensive line, George Kittle. 49ers, you look at the Pearsall pick was kind of like them in Kansas City are kind of playing the same game of we have a strong roster overall. Let's kind of just take let's kind of make some, not necessarily want to call it cute picks, but let's kind of take a little bit of a swing. You could argue Ricky Pearsall is not much of a swing. It's a safe pick, but also you can argue it's a bit of a swing just because what if, I think a lot of people would agree Ricky Pearsall has a high floor, but you could argue, like, what if he is a complete bust? Then you're like, then that's a first round pick that's essentially wasted. So I think I don't like, so yes, Ricky Pearsall should be pretty solid, pretty good for him. But if he's not, then that's a pick where you're just like, man, we essentially wasted a first round pick. But yeah, that's what's cool about like the Niners. And when you're in a position where you don't really have a lot of needs, you can kind of just address need. You can kind of just build some depth. Kind of like the perfect example of that was like last year, the Eagles taking Jalen Carter. The Eagles didn't necessarily need to draft Jalen Carter, but they're just in a position where we can just stack depth at a position where we don't really necessarily have needs just because we're pretty good all around. So that, the Pearsall pick was kind of like that. 49ers just not a lot of needs, or they weren't necessarily a wide receiver needy team, but also it's one of those picks where why not? Why not try to just keep improving? Why not try to get more weapons for Brock Purdy? Because they should be pretty solid on the offensive line again. Aaron Banks back. Trent Williams still kind of anchors that offensive line. Nick Bosa, Malik Collins, or you flip over to the defensive line. Nick Bosa, absolute stud. Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave. Hargrave's been pretty good. Leonard Floyd's had a nice career. A guy that's really a true pass rush guy. Drake Greenlaw injured in the Super Bowl. Hopefully he comes back strong. Devondre Campbell, yeah, just they're gonna play. It looks like they're playing him at this true strong side. Yeah, that's really what Devondre Campbell's game's been. He is kind of more of just a big physical, take on blocks, stuff the run. He is the quintessential strong side linebacker. And then Travarius Ward, Fuaga, Jair Brown, Renardo Green, Demondre Lenore. Yeah, Renardo Green I thought was a stretch, but he's one of those. I think Renardo Green's a guy that can play. So you look at the 49ers kind of like the Eagles. They're a team that the defensive, they really tried to emphasize building the defensive line and the linebacking core. Not that they spend no time focusing on the cornerback position, but the 49ers have had success defensively without a really good corner for the last few years. I mean, Charvarius Ward's been okay. Ambry Thomas has been okay. Diamonor Lenore, he's made some plays, but he's not necessarily a good football player. So, yeah, they've kind of got guys that have really just been solid at the cornerback position, but they've really kind of done such a good job of building up the defensive line and the linebacking core to kind of make up for some of the inadequacies at the cornerback position. Or not necessarily inadequacy, but trying to make up for the kind of the average cornerback play. So stay with the NFC West here. Kind of keep. Look at the Seahawks. Seahawks are a team I really like. I mean, Byron Murphy, that's a tremendous pick. Like you hire a coach in Mike Macdonald, who Mike Macdonald just understands defense. He understands adjustments. He understands like the way he was recruiting at Michigan and the way he was like improving defenses, like with the Baltimore Ravens. Like you look at like Baltimore, well, there was weak. You look at like people have think Baltimore's been a strong defense for several years until Mike Macdonald made them an elite defense. Baltimore was not an elite defense with some of their other DCs like Wink Martindale. They were a good defense. Mike Macdonald took it to elite defense. That's why he got himself a head coaching job in Seattle. When you look at like Seattle quietly just stacking stars, that's how. If you rewind to the 2013 Seattle Super Bowl team, they were quietly stacking stars. And it started, Cam Chancellor, Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman. It wasn't necessarily like Earl Thomas was a first-round guy, but it wasn't necessarily all first-round guys. Like Murphy, Witherspoon, 2 first-round. Those are their first-round picks the last 2 years, both of them defense. But then you look at some other guys like Leonard Williams they got from the Giants. Jaron Reed's just been solid. I think he's got, under with Mike McDonald coaching him, maybe they can get a little bit more out of him. The linebacking core, kind of I mean, Jerome Baker got some ability. Nwosu's been okay. Michael Jackson's been pretty solid at corner. And then, Tariq Woolen, long, speedy corner. So, I guess when you really look at it closely, it's not a lot of wow on the Seattle defense. But, if Byron Murphy is who we think he is and Devin Witherspoon keeps getting better, those two guys can really be the true difference makers. And then everyone else, even if everyone else is just solid to good, even if everyone else is solid, if Byron Murphy, Witherspoon are elite difference makers and everyone's just solid, like that, you can really be confident in that. Because a lot of times for defense to be good, for defense to be really good, you really only need two true difference makers. Like we're just talking about the San Francisco 49ers. Why have the 49ers been a really good defense? Because Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, two true difference makers. That's it. You could argue Trey Greenlaw, but if you're being brutal, if you want to say definitively who are the two true difference makers on the San Francisco 49ers, it's Fred Warner and Nick Bosa. I don't think a lot of people would argue that. But that's the thing. I think Witherspoon and Byron Murphy, you can't say those guys definitively are, but you can say with at least some conviction that Byron Murphy and Devin Witherspoon have the chance to be true difference makers. And then offensively, still get rolling with Geno Smith. The running back room, they've invested in the draft in Kenneth Walker, Zach Charbonnet. Christian Haynes was a offensive lineman they took this year out of UConn, I like. Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. Should be a wide receiving core that's strong. And, an offensive line that they've invested in and done a good job of just making good. So, Seattle's just not they're kind of one of those rosters where there's a lot of it's getting sneaky good, but it's one of those rosters where you could argue there's kind of both sides. There's both sides. You could argue both sides for Seattle, meaning you could look at their you could really make the glass half full, glass half empty argument, if you will, with Seattle. You could, if you're being pessimistic with Seattle, you could be they've got some good players, but also Byron Murphy's young. We don't know how, Byron Murphy is only a rookie. Witherspoon's still young. What if he takes a step back this year? You could say, we're strong at the running back position, but what if our offensive line takes a step back? Then that'll make our running backs weaker. And then Lockett, Smith and Jigba, DK Metcalf. Those guys were all together last year, but they weren't necessarily an elite core. So, that's the thing. You can look at Seattle. You can really there's a lot of optimism, but there also, there's also some things you could argue to push back on for, maybe why they're not going to be as good as people think. But John Snyder, I think, has been he's been kind of a strange GM. And by strange, I mean, he's made some good picks, but he's also made some bad picks. He stretched on some picks. He's a guy, he's just I think he's one of those guys, you listen to him interview, he's too fixated on getting, guys that are good people, which is great, but also at the same time, you got to have good football players. And I think he started to... I think when Seattle was... Schneider's a guy that when he was picking high in the first round, he was hitting on a lot of guys. I think them getting Witherspoon last year, that to me struck me as Seattle's one of those teams where I think if they have the obvious guy, they don't overthink it, but also they can stretch. Smith and Jigba and Witherspoon were guys that you're just you got to take them. You can't overthink it. But years they've stretched on, the example was, I don't. I shouldn't. I should. I think Schneider was there when they one year they took Malik McDowell, the defensive tackle from Michigan State, which was a stretch. Now some people did like Malik McDowell as a first round, but some people had concerns, and that just didn't work out. Like I gotta make sure because John Schneider. He's been the GM for over 10 years there, hasn't he? I gotta make sure. Yeah, yes. So he was there. Schneider was the guy responsible for drafting Malik McDowell. So yeah, you look at, and he also took Earl Thomas. So that's my issue with Schneider's, like when they drafted higher in the first round. Seattle kind of put themselves in a tough position, being, all those years of being good. Sometimes being just good can really hurt you in the NFL because you're drafting in the 20s each year. So you're kind of like getting this year was a good year to have a late first round pick because a lot of the good players slid down the board just because of how many quarterbacks went and offensive linemen. But a lot of years picking in the 20s is not necessarily a good thing. So Seattle kind of suffered from being good just because, they weren't able to continue to draft guys to continue to get to really go from good to elite. So that's why Seattle was kind of like a good team for a long time. But yeah, Schneider, a guy when he's picking high, doesn't overthink it and usually gets the right guy. So look at the LA Rams. Yeah, Rams had a nice draft. Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, got both the Florida State guys that were so dominant. Still got Byron Young. Byron Young, hopefully he continues to get better. Guy can rush the quarterback. He's very fast, too. Not necessarily super strong, like kind of lacks in speed to power. Kobe Turner. Yeah, the LA Rams kind of like Seattle, a lot of years picking like late or not even later first round, a lot of years just not even having a first round pick. It's the first time they've made a first round selection since 2016. So you look at the Rams, they really needed to hit on some of these late round picks. And look at all these guys they drafted this year. Jordan Whittington, the receiver. Blake Corum, Tyler Davis. Tyler Davis is an interesting guy. He, defensive tackle, a lot of people liked, but just I think he has a lot of ability, but just never really dominant, which is weird because you look at his traits, size, ability to rush the passer, athletic, can work through traffic, but just the last couple of years at Clemson, just never dominant play. But I think he has a lot of traits to be a good football player. A guy that, this is where they project him to be the second string D tackle. Yeah, a lot of traits where he can certainly be a rotational guy, maybe work his way into a starter in the NFL. Cameron Kitchens was a safety too from Miami that some people like. Darian Kendrick's been pretty good. You get Tre'Davious White too. Yeah, Blake Corum, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum. So, yeah, I mean, pretty good running back core. Kyron Williams has really emerged as a good player. Drake Stoops, too, wide receiver out of Oklahoma. Still got Stafford. And this was a playoff team last year. How much losing Aaron Donald affects them? Yeah, that's a good question. But yeah. Look at the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears, really interesting team. Yeah, Rome Odunze, Caleb Williams, they're top picks. I think, yeah, the Bears, there was obviously that was a huge debate for a long time. Would Justin Fields keep Justin Fields, trade out of the first overall pick? I think that's a lot of people argue that the Bears should have kept Justin Fields and traded out of the first round pick. But the thing people don't realize is everyone talks about trading out of a pick. What a lot of people don't realize is just because you want to trade, to make a trade, you need a trade partner. And then once you have a potential trade partner, you need a good offer too. So that's the thing. People, yes, I'm sure they could have gotten offers for a team to trade the number one pick. But just because they've found offers and trade partners doesn't mean there's a good deal. So, but yeah, Chicago, I mean, DJ Moore, strong receiver. They still got Cole Kmet. I mean, the Bears, and they've invested in the offensive line too. I think that's the thing. I think a lot of people don't realize this Chicago Bears offensive line is actually not like, it hasn't been bad, but I mean, necessarily you could say obviously it hasn't been good, but it also hasn't been bad either. Darnell Wright, too, a young tackle that they drafted in last year's draft. He should continue to get better. So you look at the Chicago Bears, like you could make a strong, like if you're being pessimistic, like you could say, yeah, with all the young guys they have, that this is probably not the year where it all comes together and they make they make the playoffs, they make a playoff run, or they, obviously to do all that, they would probably have to win so you could say next year's probably not the year where they can win the division, get in the playoffs, make a playoff run. But next year could be like a year where Chicago really takes a step forward, and maybe they are only like a 6-7 win team, but they've improved so much that you're like, dang, all these young guys showed flashes this year. That's 2025 could be really something special with another draft and just more, Caleb Williams, fully comfortable in this offense, and Rome Odunze is on the brink of becoming a superstar. So yeah, there's a lot of optimism for the Chicago Bears. But how much is it all going to take off next year? That's kind of tough to say. But yeah, my Detroit Lions had a good draft. I think the first two picks, Rakestraw and Terrion Arnold, really good picks. I think Rakestraw's a better player than people think. He was a guy that was just kind of forgotten about. And I don't know if it's because he played at Missouri, but Rakestraw just really has a lot of ability, and people just kind of, I don't know. I think Rakestraw will be a really good player, and Terrion Arnold too. Yeah, Arnold is a dude, can tackle, can cover, plays hard. That was Brad Holmes is talking about how the Lions were looking to trade up and maybe into the teens to get Terrion Arnold, so it showed that the Lions really viewed him highly. I assume they had him as their number one corner on their board. Maybe they didn't. But yeah, that was another nice pick. So I kind of want to look at real quickly here. Look at some of the mock drafts. Some of these mock drafts were actually pretty accurate the day before the draft. Yeah, Peter Schrager nailed the first 4 picks in his mock draft. That was same day of the NFL draft. A lot of people nailed these first 4 picks, and that's why I went on record saying that New England was going to take Drake May. Usually with the NFL draft, you can't really, what you're hearing a few hours before the draft, you can't take it with a grain of salt. You kind of have to just be confident in that. I kept hearing, not even just like a few hours before the draft, but like the day, like April 23rd, April 24th, I was hearing a lot of rumbling that the Bears would take Williams, Commanders would take Daniels, and then the Patriots would take Drake May. So where there's smoke, there's fire. So I was really buying that, and that's exactly what happened. And then the Arizona Cardinals took Marvin Harrison. Yeah, that was kind of one of those, like, you saw that mocked so many times there. That was kind of like the Tennessee Titans being associated with Joe Alt. It was mocked so many times where you're just like, you feel like that's just going to happen. Like, you started to kind of picture Marvin Harrison in a Cardinals uniform, and that's exactly what happened. And yeah, a lot of these rumors right here were true. LA Chargers taking Latham. Latham obviously did not go to the LA Chargers, but he did go 7th overall to the Titans. And yeah, Latham, there was a ton of buzz of him going top 10, and he did go top 10. He went to number 7 to the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, the Chargers took Joe Alt here at 5. And then at 6, he had the Giants taking Malik Neighbors. That's exactly what happened. 7, they had the Vikings trading up. Obviously, the Titans stayed here at 7 and took J.C. Latham. Falcons went quarterback 2, which is a surprise because he had him taking Dallas Turner. Some people a few days up and for the draft had him taking Latu. So, yeah. A lot of people projected Atlanta to take an edge rusher. They went quarterback, which was kind of a curveball that a lot of people weren't expecting. And then Chicago Bears taking Rome Odunze, which is what happened. New York Jets taking Brock Bowers. That did not happen. They took Olu Fashino. Titans here at 11 taking Joe Alt. So let's see if he got any of these other ones right. Looks like none of these other ones are right. Yeah, that's the thing about mock drafts. You get one wrong, and then it seems like... It looks like none of these other picks are right. But, he did have the Dolphins getting Chop Robinson. That was a good call. But, yeah, that is pretty cool, getting the first 4 picks right there. See Daniel Jeremiah's his. Jeremiah nailed the first 4 picks as well. Yeah, they must have been hearing a lot of good things about J.C. Latham. I don't know why it was weird. He was one of those guys where the NFL people viewed him higher than I think a lot of the media. You look at J.C. Latham, J.C. Latham kind of reminds me, I keep comparing him to Christian Darrisaw a few years ago because Latham never really just like mauled people, but he's one of those guys that just went out, just like was just really good and just did his job. Like, I think Latham is like, sometimes guys don't necessarily play dominant because they don't have to. Like, Latham's one of those guys that just does his job. Like, it's kind of like at the workplace, an employee who's maybe not like maybe, I don't even know. Like, say you have a car salesman and maybe he's not like a dominant car, like he doesn't like just kill sales, but he's just like really good, and he just like, customer service is off the charts, can make sales quickly, can close. I guess if J.C. Latham was an employee at a company, he'd just be a really good employee, a guy that just does his job to a T, maybe not necessarily elite, but that's J.C. Latham. I think that's why the Titans loved him and the NFL people loved him. He may not ever become an elite tackle. I know I make this case a lot, but because obviously not a lot of guys can come, but the main point with J.C. Latham, I'll just get to my point quickly. He may not become an elite tackle, but this guy's just going to be really good. And the Titans will count on, he'll do his job. He'll sustain run blocks. He'll be a strong anchor in pass protection. He won't allow a lot of sacks. He won't be a highly penalized guy. So, yeah, I think that's why the NFL liked J.C. Latham. So I got to wrap with that, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show.